This is Chandler Means, and I'm the Executive Director for Agape, and we are here today and to share and have a conversation with one of our therapists, Claudia Hallquist. Claudia is one of our mental health professionals here, been with Agape for a few years now. I believe, Claudia, you also did an internship with Agape as well, did you not?
I did.
Good. Well, we're glad that you were able to stay on and continue to work with us, and thank you for the work that you do here. What we wanted to do this morning is just ask a few quick questions and have Claudia. We'll have some other therapists later on as well communicate in a different series. But Claudia, just wanted to ask you if you would just maybe take a few moments and share with us some things that you're seeing currently with some of your clients in the midst of what we're all experiencing now, this COVID-19 virus pandemic. And certainly it's changed the way that Agape is doing our work remotely and so forth. But maybe just take a moment and share a few things about what you're seeing, some of your clients or conversations that you're having and work that you're having with them.
Mm-hmm. So one of the big things that we're seeing in the mental health community, or that we're talking about in the mental health community, is this concept of collective grief. When this pandemic started, one of the things that it did is it radically changed all of our lifestyles, and those things that used to be normal things for us to do are now no longer options for us, whether that be family gatherings, birthday celebrations, weddings, all of these things we have lost, for a indefinite period of time. And even to the small mundane tasks of driving to work and going to the grocery store without having to wear a mask. All of these lifestyle changes have kind of, again, created this collective grief. And so it's been an interesting thing to talk about in the mental health community because we're all experiencing this, and it's causing literal grief to be felt emotionally, and in our thoughts, kind of mourning these things that we have lost again. And it's funny because it's one of those where we're like, well, we're lucky, we're healthy. Some of us, we're lucky that we're healthy, that we're home, and all these things going on, but, we still have lost something. And so there is definitely this collective grief concept that's kind of big right now, and also important because it kind of gives us all permission to do what we need to do, to take care of ourselves as we're experiencing this collective grief.
Boy, that's so true. Thanks for sharing that, Claudia. One of the things that we asked you today to maybe just kind of focus in on a little bit is around this idea of just, what individuals can do to maybe sort of release or reduce some stress and fear and anxiety that they may be experiencing during this time. Could you just share some things with us that you might that you would share with clients and maybe share with our audience today?
Absolutely. Well, one of the first things is going to be, the resources are still options for us right now. And luckily Agape being in one of our main office being in Davidson County, is that there are a lot of local resources for the community to get help with things that are being impacted, whether that be finances or food, utility bills, even mortgages, you name it, and there is assistance right now. And so one of the websites that I wanted to mention was a Safenashville.org. And this has kind of been put together, it sounds like, by the mayor's office, but it's a list of all the local resources that people can utilize during this time to kind of get those needs met that might be causing some kind of anxiety, as they're starting to anticipate even future need. Also, when it comes to local resources, remembering that counseling is still an option as well. And we are going to do all that we can to protect our clients' health and wellness with that. And so that's, at Agape, one of the things that we're doing is teletherapy. So they can actually talk with a counselor from the comfort of their own home. And that's kind of one of those things that is still an option, and people can start at any point in time, including right now, even if they've never done counseling before. And so that would be a really good option as well, to have a safe place to talk about this anxiety and other things too, just during this time. When it comes to coping skills, so there's a couple that I would encourage people to start using, in the sense of, with anxiety, there's kind of two different things that I point out usually. One being a physical response, kind of what your body feels like with heart racing, tight chest, struggling to breathe, those kinds of things. And also our thoughts, and especially right now, thoughts of uncertainty, thoughts about the future, these kinds of things. And so there are two coping skills that I have want to talk about that kind of address those two things. The first one is a breathing technique, and this kind of addresses the physical response of anxiety. And so this one, it's very simple. The way that it works is you literally would just kind of pause, breathe in for 5 seconds, out for 8 seconds, and then you repeat that 3 times. And the cool thing about this one is I encourage people to practice this 2 times a day, to kind of pick just 2 times randomly in their day that they would like to start practicing this, so that their body can start adjusting to this breathing technique. They can get comfortable with using it, so that in a moment of anxiety or panic even, they've already been practicing it enough. They know what to do. They can use this as a way to kind of calm their body, as anxiety would cause it to kind of freak out a little bit. So that's one of those to use. The other one would be a grounding technique that I use. And so this one is called the 5 senses grounding technique. And this is helpful because it kind of helps our thoughts to kind of pull back to the present moment of where you are. Because often kind of in this time, a lot of this anxiety, as we kind of have talked about, is with uncertainty about the future, what's going to happen next, these kinds of things. And so if we can pull ourselves back to these present moments to really enjoy that, there's a chance that that could also relieve some anxiety as well. So this one is another really simple one. And the way that it works is you start off by naming 5 things that you can see. And we're going to go through all the senses. So first is 5 things you can see. You get to name whatever those are. 4 things that you can touch. And sorry. And I often encourage people to actually touch those objects as well. And then 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So going from easy senses to hard senses, kind of through that list. But the nice thing about this one is you can actually use this wherever you are, and just like the breathing technique as well, you can use that wherever you are. But the grounding technique, especially in nature right now, with people being encouraged to take walks and those kinds of things, really engaging your senses can be very powerful. And so that would be the perfect time to kind of do this while going on walks, those kinds of things. Also, it's simple enough too that you can do that either as a family group, kind of helping people like, let's all name 5 things we can see, or 4 things we can touch, or even helping someone else who is very anxious by guiding them through this and helping them kind of work through their senses to help them kind of calm their own anxiety as well. And that's also kind of one of those things that I would say could be very helpful as well, because in those moments of anxiety or someone else being anxious, what can I do to help? This might be helpful. But again, everyone's different in what is helpful. And so it's one of those where these are just some things to try. And there is a lot of variations of this that if people were to go online, there's a lot of different breathing techniques and grounding techniques and things that they can actually use to practice these concepts.
That's great. Hey, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, Claudia, just go back. You mentioned the breathing and grounding techniques. Just take a minute and just kind of review that just real quickly, just those different steps. I've heard that before, especially the breathing. In fact, I'm not so sure. I didn't read somewhere that that's what Navy SEALs are trained to do just before they go into highly stressful exercises. So didn't know you were going to say that today, but just review those real quickly again, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So the breathing technique, again, is very simple. So the idea is that you're just going to take a minute and pause. You can ground yourself by putting your feet flat on the floor, hands on your knees. You also can do this wherever you are. You don't have to do that, but that can be helpful. From there, what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in for 5 seconds and out for 8 seconds. And then you're going to repeat that 3 times. And you're going to practice that twice a day. And the reason that we do that is because, again, in a moment of high anxiety, high panic, one of the things that we want to make sure that your body is ready to do is use a coping skill. And coping skills are helpful once they are incorporated into routine and practiced and these kinds of things. And so that's where this practicing it 2 times a day is pretty important. And that way, again, one, it's going to help just kind of regulate your body through the day. Also, it's going to be helpful so that in a moment of anxiety comes, we can use this coping skill. We've done it, we've practiced it, we know what to do, and here we are, we're going to utilize it. Yeah. And again, and the important part is just that, again, 5 seconds in, 8 seconds out, a minimum actually of 3 times. You can do it longer than that as well if you feel more anxious, or if you feel like you need a little longer of a time to kind of really focus on your breathing.
So, just kind of in closing, anything that you want to share, Claudia, that might be helpful to people out there, either related to counseling, people might have an interest in coming to Agape, or counseling in general. It doesn't have to be Agape. We work with a lot of congregations and churches in the area, but is there anything that you just like to share as a mental health professional that would be encouraging and helpful to those that might be listening and watching this video?
Absolutely. And I think I forgot to go over that 5 senses grounding technique. So I'll do that really
Yeah,
fast and then I'll
go
kind of
ahead,
jump
yeah.
into that next question. But the 5 senses grounding technique, again, you're going to start with naming 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch,
Mm.
3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And you're literally just going to work your way through those senses. And again, you can do this in nature, you can do this inside, you can do this all inside of your head, you can do this out loud. But the biggest thing is just, to make sure this is kind of a way to bring yourself back to this is where I am in this moment instead of thinking about the future. And again, this can be done collectively as a family, or even kind of used as a guide for someone else. Like you could talk them through, why don't you name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, that kind of a thing, just to kind of help everyone to ground during this time. And then the last question.
Yeah.
So I would say the biggest thing that I would like to communicate would just be, during this time, the term essential versus non-essential has been thrown out when it comes to talking about jobs and those kinds of things. And I think we understand, why those terms were used, because it makes sense, during this time, needing to make sure that we are prioritizing safety. But one of the things that I want to be very clear on is that we are all essential as human beings in just being a human and who we are. And so though someone might have a job that is considered non-essential, they are still an essential person. And I say that, hopefully as encouragement to everyone, just to remember and to not take hopefully that non-essential category too personally, that they are still essential in who they are and the roles that they play with their family, with their friends, just by existing. And so that's kind of one of those things that, hearing that and hearing the impact of those 2 words, I definitely wanted to just voice that.
Well, thanks for sharing that. As we say here often about the work that we do with the healing love of Christ, because everyone is created in the image of God and they all have worth in God's eyes, regardless of what our jobs are, what we do for a living or a career. We are all valued and valuable in the sight of God. Claudia, thank you for taking a few minutes and sharing these tips with us and these strategies, as well as just sharing some things with us about things you're seeing at this particular time in our history. I'm sure many of these things are also will carry on even beyond, where there's still going to be stress and anxiety and fear about various things that people are concerned about once we get back to whatever normal looks like. So thank you for taking a few minutes today. And again, I'm Chandler Means, with Executive Director for Agape. Our number at Agape is 615-781-3000, and you can connect with our front office if you have any needs related to counseling, or you just want to check into possibility of setting up an appointment or a time to be a part of or join with us at Agape in our counseling program. Thank you again, Claudia. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.